Among the most complex endings in The White Lotus Season 3 is Gaitok's, with his difficult choice to shoot and kill Rick being rewarded with a new job under Shritala. Throughout Season 3, Gaitok's story has largely surrounded his reservations about his security guard career, as his stance on anti-violence contrasts with the harm and aggression that often comes with such a position. His dilemma is finally put to the test in The White Lotus Season 3's ending when he's forced to either maintain his anti-violence stance or shoot Rick, who had just killed Jim Hollinger and 2 bodyguards. Ultimately, Gaitok abandons his non-violent principles and kills Rick, marking the 5th and final death in The White Lotus Season 3 finale. Rather than panicking from his decision, Gaitok makes peace with what is done, and is greatly rewarded by obeying Shritala's command to kill Jim's murderer. Gaitok's final scenes show that he's been promoted to the position of Shritala's driver, perhaps also a bodyguard given the death of her 2 previous guards, and seems to be in a happy relationship with Mook. However, whether Gaitok's ending is actually happy is a more complicated matter. Gaitok really killed Rick because of Mook. Gaitok needed to prove himself to Mook by taking out Rick. When he had Rick in his line of sight, Gaitok still hesitated before pulling the trigger twice. In that moment of hesitation, he was weighing whether to go against his principles and listen to the preaching of Mook and those around him who advised that violence is sometimes necessary and part of life. Ultimately, it was his love for Mook and her words about strength, defense, and ambition still in his head from the White Lotus Muay Thai fight that inspired him to pull the trigger and kill Rick. Earlier in the White Lotus Season 3 finale, Gaitok felt Mook's disappointment when he told her that he was considering quitting his job because he couldn't stand the harm and violence that it entailed. Gaitok worried that Mook thought less of him and would never love him if he didn't prove that he had the potential to use violence when necessary, especially if it meant protecting her, their boss, and other innocent people. Rather than lose Mook, Gaitok chose to prove himself to her by shooting a man who had just killed 3 people, as he had no way of knowing whether Rick would go after more. By killing Rick, Gaitok also proved himself to Shritala, who he had already been hoping would eventually hire him as a bodyguard. If Gaitok hadn't shot Rick, he would have lost Mook and his job in one fell swoop. In that brief moment before pulling the trigger on Rick, Gaitok decided that losing Mook would have been worse than losing his morals. Gaitok killing Rick worked for him. Gaitok got Mook and the job he wanted. Gaitok, Tame Thaptimthong, waving from a car in The White Lotus Season 3, Episode 8. Gaitok took the risk of killing Rick only hoping that things would work out in his favor after pulling the trigger. However, it ultimately did result in Gaitok getting everything he had been dreaming of. After killing Rick, Gaitok ended up cementing his relationship with Mook, leaving his unfulfilling security guard position, getting a more ambitious job as Shritala's driver, and earning the respect from others that he had long been wishing for.